Hi there, my name's Simon from writtenlegalenglish.com. Welcome to this video where I go through the sentences that I asked you to have a look at in my little video on Monday, and the post, you can find the post on Facebook. Hi, my name's Simon from writtenlegalenglish.com, and welcome to this video where I walk you through some redrafting which focuses on the error that we're looking at this week, which is squinting modifiers, or which are squinting modifiers. The sentences I asked you to correct can be found in the Facebook post that I posted on Monday. And there's a link to that Facebook post below the video if you're watching on YouTube, or above the video if you're watching on Facebook. So without further ado, let's get on with correcting these errors. Now, the first sentence I asked you to look at was this one. Planning and then writing your memo suitably increases the chances a judge will be persuaded. Now, you see the way that I emphasized this sentence. I paused after memo and I stressed suitably increases. I could say that a different way. Planning and then writing your memo suitably increases the chances a judge will be persuaded. So in that case, I put memo and suitably together, and I put a pause after suitably, and then I carried on with the sentence. In both ways, what I've done is I've created two clauses in that sentence based on the modifier, the adverb, which is in the wrong place and which is causing all of the problems. And that adverb, that modifier, is of course called suitably. Because in English, we can understand this sentence in one of two ways. I know for a fact in Polish you can't, because Polish language conventions are different, but in English, this sentence can be understood in one of two different ways. And those possible messages, those possible understandings are these: that there is suitable planning, or that there are suitable increases. In this case, so planning suitably or increases suitably. The author knows what they were trying to communicate, but the problem is they drafted this sentence in such a way to put the modifier in the middle, which means that the modifier can look in both directions. And that's exactly what a squint is. A squint is where you've got two eyes looking in slightly different directions. Now, I've got a very, very small squint, so I can joke about that. Many people probably won't find it that funny, but that's exactly what it is. So one adverb which looks in two different directions. And both of these interpretations are fine in English, which is where the problem is. The author writes something meaning one thing. I, as the reader, read this and understand it as something else. So the author might mean planning suitably. I might understand this as increases suitably. And there we have the problem. And that's where we might have possible litigation. So we need to change this sentence. We need to redraft it in a certain way to avoid this squinting modifier and to avoid this potential problem. Well, there's an easy way to do this and there is a difficult way to do this. The easy way to do this, if we concentrate on the first message, which is planning suitably, we can just introduce a comma. Planning and writing your memo suitably, comma, increases the chances a judge will be persuaded. So this comma has the effect of dividing this sentence into two different clauses. And you can see that suitably is included in the first clause. And that's the effect a comma can have. A comma can change the meaning of a sentence by being in a certain place or by not being in a certain place. And there are a number of very well-known cases which are based on comma position, which and the subject of those cases was, in one case, £1 million, in another case I think it was £10 million, very well-known cases, all about the position of a comma. That's the easy way to do it. The harder way to do it would be simply to ask yourself, what is, if you're the author, ask yourself, what am I trying to say, and redraft it completely. So we might come up with a conditional structure. If you plan your memo before you write, the judge is more likely to be persuaded. So we can change the structure completely. If we have a look at the second message, which is increases suitably, once again we can use a comma. Planning a memo before you write it, comma suitably increases the chances a judge will be persuaded. So now the comma comes before suitably, which means that suitably modifies the following verb. Or we can redraft it to communicate the message in a different way. To have a higher chance of persuading a judge, you must plan your memo before you write it. Of course, there are many other ways to communicate that message. These are just possible rewrites that you might have thought about. So hopefully now you've got a better idea of what a squinting modifier is, how a squinting modifier is formed by putting the adverb in between two clauses, and now the problem that can arise as a result of that in the English language. So let's have a look at the remaining two sentences. Reviewing your writing thoroughly improves your chances of writing well. Reviewing your writing thoroughly improves your chances of writing well. So the squinting modifier here is thoroughly. It looks two ways. It squints, which gives us two potential messages: thoroughly reviewing or thoroughly improves. And once again, we can use the same solutions as we did beforehand. We can either introduce a comma before or after thoroughly to clearly put thoroughly in one of those clauses, or we can redraft the sentence completely to communicate what we want to say. I'm not going to show you those examples because there's many different ways that you can rewrite that. The third sentence, explaining your legal argument clearly will help your client understand the legal issue. Where's the squinting modifier? Of course, the squinting modifier is clearly, which gives us two potential messages: clearly explaining or clearly helping the client to understand. So, and once again, we can use commas carefully, or we can redraft the sentence completely to communicate what it is that we want to communicate in an easier to understand way. Okay, so you would have noticed that the squinting modifier is caused by an adverb being put in the wrong position, in a position in which it can look forwards and it can look backwards. And the adverbs that we used were suitably, thoroughly, and clearly. Now, there is an argument in plain legal English doctrine, if we can say that, which argues against using adverbs and adjectives as a general rule of thumb. The general idea is that a plain English shouldn't need to use adjectives or adverbs because we can use strong verbs, or we can use other ways of communicating a much clearer message, and that adjectives and adverbs can be problematic. And certainly, if you think about the three adverbs which I chose for these sentences, thoroughly, clearly, and suitably, these are not the greatest adjectives for a legal memo or for legal or communication with your client. What exactly are you trying to say by using suitably, clearly, and thoroughly? So that's a slightly different thing to think about, and I'm not going to go into detail in this video, but your choice of adverb is something that you should ask yourself a question about. Do I need this adverb? Should I really be saying this adverb? Is there a better way to say this if I have to rely on an adverb to communicate the message? And certainly within the area of squinting modifiers, there are very, very common offenders. Often is one and only is another. So if you use often and only in your writing, and by accident you put often or only in the middle of a sentence in a way that it can look both ways, look at the message, the clause before and the clause after, then you might be guilty yourself of creating squinting modifiers. So from a redrafting point of view, have a look at your writing very, very carefully. Look at the adverbs that you use, particularly if it's often or only, and ask yourselves, is there a potential that I've created a double message here? And if I have, then I need to redraft it. If you've got any questions at all about squinting modifiers, or indeed the examples that I've used in this video, then please leave a comment below and I'll be happy to get back to you. And remember to let me know if in your language you can do squinting modifiers exist? Are they a thing like they are in English, or is it like Polish, where language conventions say that squinting modifiers can't exist? I'll see you again on Monday with some more exercises and legal redrafting for you to do.